Takar's perspective. 2706, Terran calendar. 7 years before. I'm dying. I am starving to death in this cell. My feathers lost their iridescent luster weeks ago. I began molting a few days later. At first, I raged. I shrieked at my captors that they would regret this. When my clan found out where I was, they'd be sorry. I puffed up with self-importance and asked them if they knew who my mother was. Not that they could understand me, having taken my translator. I was such a fool. Of course they know who my mother is. Knowing who my mother is will be exactly why they kidnapped me and carried me to this planet thousands of light years away from Raquel. Weakly, I stand and pit over to the bars. I look to the enormous Friendian, sitting with his back turned to me, who appears to be the leader of this gang. Please, I rasp. You need to give me some real food. I'll be quiet, I swear, but I'm going to die if you keep only feeding me this. I hold up one of the dried fruit pieces, that are the only sustenance they provided since taking me hostage. Raquel is a class 7. This can't be from more than a class 3. Whatever you want from me, you surely understand that you're less likely to get it if I die, don't you? I plead, almost sobbing. The giant, purple-furred herbivore turns his head, revealing one side of a thick snout, lined with 3 eyes and tipped with a blunt, 2-pronged horn, a tusk jutting up around 10 centimeters from his lower jaw. Toshast, Rakast, he rumbles in his guttural language, before turning away and making no move to remedy my starvation. Defeatedly, I turn back around and slump to the floor of my cell. I lie there for a long time, contemplating. There is a strange peace in knowing that my death is imminent. At least my suffering will end. I would have liked to live a long life. I would have liked to find an accomplished woman to make me her life mate. I would have liked to become a teacher and teach the next generation of Aquali boys how to be more than a pretty set of feathers. Once I figured that out for myself, that is. But none of it was to be. It seems that, in the mother's wisdom and the father's mercy, it has been decreed that I am to die in this cell, barely more than a fledgling, and having accomplished nothing in my life. Boom! I look up, curiously, in the direction of an unfamiliar, resounding noise. It's coming from outside this room, elsewhere in the building. My kidnappers look like they're flying equally blindly to me, regarding what exactly the noise of the sound is. Bash! Clang! Clatter! Accompanied by the sound of screaming echoes from the same direction as previously. One of them checks their holopad and vocalizes, Terran! Terraniwi! Sounding terrified. Odastavrom! Imast Oruk! Orders the Friendian, followed by a flurry of activity as his subordinates seal the heavy aluminium doors, grab their weapons and take position, facing the door. The leader stands, drawing up to his full 4-meter height, picks up a plasma glaive and a long length of chain with a heavy ball at the end of it, before growling, Vrokas Teris! Bolza Terast! The sounds of violence steadily draw nearer, followed by an eerie still. Boom! It's the sound of the solid metal door being struck so hard that it dents and buckles. The gangsters visibly quaver. Whoever is attacking it must have some fairly impressive machinery to be able to deform the door like that. Boom! Boom! 2 more dents get put in the door from the other side. Then there is a pause, before I hear the building roar of a plasma weapon being ignited. The tip of a blade appears through the door, around 2.5 meters from the floor, and streaks a trail of molten aluminium behind it, in a curved path downward. The blade is withdrawn, and reappears at the start of the first slice, carving its mirror. With a clatter, The extracted portion of the door is held several meters into the room. What stands behind the aperture is not, as I had suspected, a piece of siege equipment, but a man. More than 2 meters tall, his powerfully built body covered in skin-tight synthetic utility clothing in a rich royal blue, with metal plates here and there, face obscured by a silvered helmet, wielding a meter of glowing white plasma blade, with a straight back edge, and an artfully curved leading edge, and looking for all the world as if he just kicked 3 large dents in their solid security door, stands a Terran. Is this a pre-mortem hallucination? The interloper points his sword in the direction of my captors, and in a level voice that's nonetheless able to fill the room better than the Friendians, proclaims, "One chance, a one chance only. Surrender." There are a few seconds of silence before the Friendian bellows, "Moshas Terrast!" followed by a volley of laser and kinetic pulse fire being opened on the Terran, or where the Terran was. With unbelievable speed and agility, he zigzags towards his main group of opponents. Clearing their cover in a bounding leap, he brings his blade across all 3 of their chests in a single slash, causing a burst of steam to erupt, their biofluids having been instantly vaporized by the superheated metal. I briefly catch sight of a hole singed in the Terran's uniform, a small patch of scorched skin visible beneath. He doesn't even seem to have noticed. I didn't even see him get hit by the laser. He takes a flying leap towards the next 2, seeming to become a cloud of spinning limbs as he does, and dispatches them, faster than I can comprehend with, I infer, 2 ruthlessly efficient swings of his sword. The steam reaches me now, and I dully register that I am breathing in water vapor that was, until moments ago, circulating around the bodies of sentient beings. The last gangster, aside from the Friendian, desperately throws their weapon to the ground, holds up their empty manipular appendages and pleads, "Ektre, Turin! Ektre! Evekim!" But that is as far as they get, before the outraged Friendian kicks them to the ground and crushes their chest with one of his thick, powerful legs in a single fluid motion. It seems he's not a fan of surrender as a concept. Looking down furiously at the man who just effortlessly dispatched all but one of his underlings, the Friendian lets out a deep, rumbling growl. Unspooling the long chain, he dips his glaive with his left hands, and takes the ball in his upper right hand, the handle in his lower right. He hurls the ball at the Terran. If that ball is as heavy as it looks, it must be carrying enough kinetic energy to stove in that helmet, and shatter even the calcareous skull of a Death Welder. The Terran appears to teleport out of the way, and the Friendian catches the chain as it goes taut, swinging it around his head to return it to his opponent. The Terran leaves the chain, severing it with a slash of his weapon as his entire body spins dynamically around his axis before he lands safely on his feet. The ball bounces resoundingly across the large room, confirming itself to have been exactly as heavy as it looked as it smashes dents into the floor. The gigantic gangster roars, ignites his glaive, and takes a sweeping slash at the Terran, aiming the long blade for his center of gravity. The Terran evades, though it looked close. The next few moments are a whir, as the Friendian viciously hacks, slashes, and stabs, always hitting the empty space that the Terran was occupying the instant prior. Friendians are one of the only Garden World species able to match or even exceed Terrans in terms of the raw power output of their bodies. So, as admirable as the Terran's efforts have been, I'm certain that is over for him, as the cruel pole arm comes swinging down on him in a ferocious arc. Impossibly, the man has blocked the blade with his own. The plasma weapons scream as they're pressed into one another. The Friendian commits more and more of his superior weight to the bind, and the Terran's body buckles from trying to match it. The three of the Friendian's eyes that I'm able to see burn with gleeful malice, and then he stumbles forwards. The Terran spun his body, sliding out from under his opponent's guard, causing him to overbalance. The helmeted man is placed just right to be able to bring down a single clean strike on my captor's thick neck. The horned head is sent flying toward my cell, trailing a billowing cloud of steam behind it, and coming to rest facing me, allowing me to see all 6 of his eyes, now absent of any light of life or intelligence. The enormous, decapitated body crumples limply to the floor. If what I just witnessed was real and not a vivid, end-of-life delirium, I no longer doubt any of the bedtime stories I was told of Terran's wartime combat prowess. Panting heavily, the Terran looks to his collapsed foe, then casts around, seeming to be looking for anyone he missed. Having satisfied himself of his total victory, he extinguishes his weapon and sheaves it back at his hip. Then he turns his helmet's bright green sensor array to me. He walks toward my cell. No, he couldn't be that stupid, could he? Whatever your grievance with these gangsters was, you can surely see that I'm not one of them, can't you? I'm caged. I'm mostly dead. Just leave and let me expire in peace. He passes the severed head and stands at the bars, looking down on me with that inscrutable blank helmet. Seeming to have decided he won't let a little thing like a locked cell door stand between him and ending the last life in the room other than his. He places his knuckles back to back and inserts his fingers through a gap between the bars, wrapping his hands around them. With a heaving effort, he leans to his left, extending his right arm and warping the metal bars out of his way with sheer brute force. Having created a Terran-sized gap in the bars, he steps through. He crosses the cell to where I lie, helplessly, wings sprawled on the floor, and drops to his haunches, still looking down at me with his blank mask of death. Looking up at him, I croak, "I've neither the energy nor the inclination to amuse you by begging for my life. If you wish to kill me, do it!" With far more composed defiance than I feel. He reaches for a pouch in his belt and withdraws something. Bringing a hand to my beak, he opens it to reveal a piece of fruit? Without awaiting any input from my brain, my beak digs greedily into the ripe, succulent food. It's a wonderful mix of sour and sweet. It tastes more calorific than anything I've ever eaten. While I eat, the thought that this fruit might be poison does briefly occur to me, before I realize the absurdity of thinking that this man might need to resort to poison to finish me off. Having eaten my fill without having come close to finishing the unfamiliar fruit that I now suspect to be of death-old origin, and feeling somewhat restored by the bellyful of nourishment, I stand shakily. The man extends a hand to me, revealing a second gift, a small metal disc. I take the translator and adhere it to my skull, just behind my infrared eye. At this point, he takes off his helmet, revealing a scarred Terran face. The only surprising thing about the man's face is the expression it wears. His knitted brows are tilted upward in the middle, beneath his fringe of curly copper hair. The edges of his mouth tilt down, and his bright green eyes are colored by what my translator assures me is an expression of pity and concern. "Thank you for the food and the translator, sir," I say politely but warily, still not having entirely ruled out that he might simply be another kidnapper. If he is, he's at least one willing to feed me. If I may ask, what is your name?
My name's Victor. I work for your aunt. 2714 Terran calendar. 1 year AF.
Terrans, unlike most garden world species, have an extremely short natural lifespan. Without the use of regeneration, most didn't live much longer than a century, and only lived that long because of their own extensive repertoire of medical interventions. I address the classroom full of boys, barely having shed the last of their childhood feathers, and clearly thinking that being schooled is a waste of their time, when they're so pretty and come with such well-respected pedigrees. Surely they'll find a competent woman who can be educated enough for the both of them, right? Trying to enthuse them somehow, I continue. The only surviving, naturally produced sapient Terran species is also the most numerous, making up nearly 97% of the UTC sapient population. They call themselves Homo sapiens, which in one of their ancient languages means sapient man, or knowing man, though they far more commonly refer to themselves as humans, which traces to a word meaning person of the soil, or the land, or of the earth. This is, not coincidentally, also the meaning of the word Terran. Though you must be aware that human also covers the resurrected lineages Homo neanderthalensis, man of the Neander Valley, Homo denisova, man of Denis's Cave, Homo longi, man of the Dragon River, Homo Tshirt, man of the Tshirt scrubland, and the newly sequenced and not quite yet resurrected Homo Lisri, man of Lisri village, as well as numerous other lineages that, for the moment, remain extinct. Together, all resurrected Homo lineages account for a little under 2% of the UTC's population, with the last one and a bit percent being composed of entirely artificial biological species, collectively termed uplifts, as well as AIs who have recently achieved recognition by the GU's parliament. I look around the classroom and see all of the bored faces looking back at me. I sigh and persevere. Another thing you should know about Terrans is that we've got a nasty habit of showing up unannounced, interrupts a familiar voice. I whip my head to the doorway curtain and see 3 familiar feet and 1 unfamiliar bionic. The curtain is drawn back, revealing 2 familiar faces. Victor! I start delightedly, before being cut short by the terrified shrieks of my entire class. Boys! I snap, sharply, shutting them up. This man is only a Terran. The first thing I taught you about Terrans is that they are nothing to be afraid of. I use the phrase overwhelmingly compassionate. Why are you screeching like hungry hatchlings? To be fair to him, Taki, I learned about great white sharks in school. Learned about how overwhelmingly harmless to humans they are. How we're not fatty enough to be appetizing to them, and on the rare occasion they do kill us, it's likely either because of mistaken identity or curious investigation. Pretty sure I'd still have screamed my head off if one had poked his nose around the classroom door. Teacher, what's a great white shark? Asks Kraka, the son of a minor clan mother and a middling student. A creature you're clearly not ready to learn about if this is how you react to a friendly human, I shoot back sternly. I turn back to Victor and say, well, since you've already disrupted my lesson, would you care to come in? Perhaps a little bit of live presentation will enthuse these boys to learn more about the most recent additions to the Galactic Union. He bares his teeth and, stooping low beneath the Wakwali ceiling, steps inside the classroom, followed by my aunt.